Welcome back to the Friday, June 27, 2025 installment of Market Plus. Dan Hueber is with us now. Dan, I've told you this before, and I mean it. I always enjoy reading your commentary because you give me lines to set you up,
Sure,
and it's perfect.
Segues into things, yes.
I didn't feel it was appropriate to do during the TV show, so I think it's a perfect opportunity to do it now on Market Plus. You mentioned almost squirrel-like reactions to the market right now.
Yes.
But you then said during the show, there's so much items out there that should be driving us higher that aren't. How is the squirrel mentality of, something over there, not in jive with the negative nature of the market?
Of course, keep in mind that squirrel mentality is a very short attention span. So it may react to something, but it so quickly forgets about it. It just kind of goes back and we languish, I guess, would be the best word. You know, and again, the corn market is the perfect example this year. We will get excited every now and then, but it's almost always temporary. And a lot of things you would expect to have generated a reaction in the corn market just really failed to do so this year. So I think, yes, it's tired. You know, we've been 2.5 years lower, almost 3 years lower. So I think it's just a very worn out. The bulls have just been beat. And they're finally giving up. And I think that final give up, you know, when you look at the large specs right now, they are short a massive amount of corn. So, I mean, they're counting on this crop season just being perfect the rest of the year out. So if there's going to be an element of surprise, you know, it's probably not going to be in their favor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's in the bean market then.
Could be in the bean, yeah.
Let's take a look at a couple of questions. Let's start with Boyce in North Dakota. He has two. First one. The funds are net long beans, which usually means it's time to sell. But the futures chart does not look like a sell signal to me. What should we be doing with soybeans?
Well, keeping in mind that it's only been a week that they've been long beans. So, I mean, they were short a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I didn't see the numbers here this afternoon if they have eliminated that long position now, which could very well have been here with the performance in the last week. So it's, you know, I think in the bean market, if there's any that has a possibility of seeing some excitement really build in there. I mean, one, you've had oil been pretty responsive. Granted, it's backed off here this week, but I mean, the change or the new guidelines on the renewable fuels gave that oil market a nice boost. So, I mean, that element could help us out. The other is, I think we tend to forget, we're down 3 million acres on soybeans this year. So, I mean, you've already kind of set the stage to where if there is an issue, and again, if is a huge word in this category, but if there is an issue late July, August, you know, when you get into the critical months in the soybeans, you could still see a pretty good response in the soybean market. So I'm not anxious to get terribly bearish just yet on soybeans.
And you hinted a little bit of another story that's going there. You mentioned 3 million acre change, but the stocks is a story that doesn't seem to be resonating with the back of the church.
Doesn't resonate. You know, you can say the same thing in corn, less to a weed.
Wheat's
the only one where it's you've actually seen ending stocks start to grow. But, you know, 350, 380 million bushel of beans is by no means a panic, nor is $1.3 billion on corn. But on the same token, they're not burdensome. So it really would not take much of a shift in yield to really tighten both of those down. So it's, I think getting too complacent on, boy, it's bearish, it's never going to be able to change, leaves you in a bad position this year, just because if surprises come, they're not going to be bearish surprises. So.
Okay, fair enough. Well, this is a technical question. Boyce had a follow-up. Are the soybean charts putting in a pennant formation? And if you could, define what the pennant formation means.
Well, a pennant formation, of course, is when your range just continues to narrow down and narrow down. You know, you can break out either higher or lower from a pennant formation, but you know, usually if you shot up, narrow down a range, you tend to shoot up a second time. I really think the overall pattern on soybeans, particularly if you look at a weekly chart, has been more of just a massive sideways trade. I don't see so much the pennant formation there. But if you look at November beans only, we've got a huge triple top at the same place, you know, almost identical in distance from each of those peaks that we hit just here a week and a half ago on the November beans. We backed off. So the old adage is if you hit that a fourth time, it will always go through. So again, I still think there is possibility that, you know, we'll take the, and again, I'm not going to predict what the weather is, but if a surprise comes, it's going to be a bullish surprise. I don't think you get a bearish surprise at this point because we've already factored that in there. So
we had Eric Hunt from University of Nebraska in the main program talking about weather. His conversation will be released on Tuesday, talking about it still looks like to him as a forecaster, July and August can get hot.
Okay.
Is that, I mean, we get through pollination. We're pretty good to get to pollination. So how much weather story can there still be then?
Well, of course, hot is, I mean, granted, if you've got enough ample enough moisture, you're probably not going to do much damage. But I mean, I want to define this. So hotter than we are today?
Well, that's the thing, exactly. 90. I mean, any time you have growing over 95 degrees, that's stress on the crop.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, and as long as you have moisture accompanying that, it can handle that stress. But yeah, if the moisture turns off, and then you really continue with that hot pattern, it still could tend to excite things a little bit. So.
All right. Well, let's talk about some records.
Okay.
Because Jim in North Iowa wants to know, Dan. Let's talk about them. Rainfall, yellowing in fields, lost nitrogen, lower prices, and eventually income. If there's a record crop, what does that mean for farmers?
Well, I mean, it's certainly not a pretty picture. Now, granted, record crop also means that you've got more bushels to sell. I mean, which there's an old adage: you can yield your way out of a problem. Good story. I don't know if that's necessarily always going to be the case, but it just prolongs the agony. And again, it really sets you up for next year. At that point, is that going to translate into another bad year? But again, like I say, after 2 to 3 years of down prices, you're probably going to make some adjustments on a worldwide basis. I mean, South America will probably have less incentive, particularly with the dollar under pressure. South America is going to have less incentive to increase acreage this fall. So, 12 months from now, I think we're looking at a different story. But we've still got to make it through this crop year. So.
Do we really think Brazil is going to lower acreage?
Well, I wouldn't say lower. They're not going to expand as much.
Well, but didn't you say something about this week? There's a story, the soy moratorium. There was kind of a loophole that they found in the Amazon, which, let me see if I get this right. The acres that hadn't been used, you can't plow up new forest to grow.
New rainforest.
New rainforest.
Right.
So then what does that mean?
But rainforest that had been previously cleared but has sat idle for a few years, so there are some trees regrowing on it, those type of things, that can be cleared and used again and would not fall into the category you can't buy. And again, this is the grain companies' policies. They would not buy soybeans that originated from clear-cut rainforest. So, again, that's probably, that just adds into the pile. Now, granted, may or may not be economically viable to do that at these price levels on a global stance. Probably the bigger risk of expansion down there is in what they call permanent pasture. I think there is something 40, 50 million acres yet that could come into production. So, I mean, those are very long-term things at this point in time. But still, price to the Brazilian farmers is partially based on, it's in relationship to the U.S. dollar. And as the dollar continues to go cheaper, that makes it really just a less incentive for the Brazilians to want to take the risk of increasing production or increasing acreage.
Well, let's stay positive, shall we?
Okay.
I've got two more negative questions here for you, if I could, Dan. Derek in South Dakota asked corn, how low can it go? But I want to go with Ronald's question in Iowa because he, too, is talking about corn. He says there's some saying about trying to catch a falling knife. Is that what's going on with this corn market right now?
People staying away from it, certainly. I mean, that's just one of the old rules of trading is you never want to try to grab a falling knife. So you want to let prices kind of settle out on their own, and then if you want to make a decision to move in, you do it from there. Here when you look at new crop corn, let's say for example, I really think this 420 level December corn is a critical level of support. If we start breaking below 420, I'm underestimating just how bearish this is. But I think if you start to see prices stabilize around this 420 level here in the next week, the worst of it's behind us at least for this between now and harvest time.
Can't believe I'm actually going to say this, but is sub 4 possible, and what would the scenario be?
No weather problem. Sub 4 certainly would be possible. So Again, we're only talking about 20 cents, 25 cents.
Right,
at this
we're not that
time.
far.
So, that's half or 5%, so 5% drop would not be, but I think you would have to look at the rest of this growing season, look good, and have a pretty rapid harvest, and certainly we could have sub $4 corn this fall. So.
And we talked about beans a little bit. They were looking close to going below $10 not that long ago, and they've been able to withstand. So does that give you confidence that corn maybe can withstand that other psychological barrier, the $4 barrier?
Oh, it's certainly. I mean, psychologically, yeah, it's going to be challenging for now to take corn under $4, at least until we have the next crop in the bin.
Yeah,
so
fair enough. Thanks to Darren, thanks to Derek, Phil, the rest of you who submitted questions. Always like to have you there. And thanks to you, Dan Hueber. Good to see you.
My pleasure. It's great to see you as well.
All right, Dan Hueber, everyone. And I do want to remind you to get signed up for the Market to Market Insider newsletter. It's free. Sign up at markettomarket.org. Help us hit one of the key thresholds we're trying to hit there internally. Next week, they're going to have a conversation on the rural economy. Ernie Goss and Chris Robinson will be here. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.